second slide, what gets in the way of developing cultural mindset crucial for success? Or are you seeing the first?
Yes, we're seeing that with your book.
Okay,
Yep.
Great. All right, so what do you think gets in the way of developing a cultural mindset? I've got a few images here. You can just answer out loud or in the text. So do these images bring up anything for you in terms of what might get in the way of developing a cultural mindset? Or anything else that you notice as a coaching supervisor? Or habits? Thank you, Anne.
Being blind.
I think truth.
Sorry.
Go first.
Being blindsided by, as I said, the constraints of your own cultural perspective and not even realizing that you have one. And the other thing is lack of experience with people who are different from you.
Mm-hmm. Blindsided, I love that. Not enough contact or interaction with people that are different.
Yes,
from you.
and arrogance or hubris, which is worse.
Yes, ego. I also see in the chat the bias.
Curiosity. Yeah.
Bias you bring with you, entrenched ways of operating, beliefs, judgments.
Lack of curiosity and compassion.
Yes. Lack of curiosity, compassion. I almost think you all have read like my book chapter or something, some of my blogs. Yeah. Thinking we are more similar than we are. So ignoring differences. Yes. Yeah. And the image in the bottom right for me is just the rush of our world and not stopping and taking time and reflecting, which is so important, as we know, in coaching supervision. Not even knowing we live in a cultural bubble, cultural cruise control, past and bad experiences. This is great. Okay. Huh. So we're on slide 3 now. What does it mean to develop a cultural mindset and why should you care? It's our agenda. And how I'm going to share my top 4 keys to developing a cultural mindset so that hopefully you can have a beginning clear roadmap by the end of our time together. And then in the final few minutes, I'll share resources, including the references from today and invitations to further develop your cultural mindset for success. Okay. Somehow. Huh. So the what and why of cultural mindset, I had this on the whiteboard, but culture meaning the unique shared beliefs, values, communication, and behavior of a community of interacting people. And that's not just nationality. We have many cultural identities, and we'll see that on the next slide. Cultural mindset, the ability to integrate different cultures and consciously shift into another perspective or cultural frame of reference without fear of losing my own. So that's kind of framed around Milton Bennett's ethnocentrism and the idea that we can choose to see things from different cultural lenses. And then CQ, or cultural intelligence, recognizing and understanding the beliefs, values, rank, and behaviors of those cultural identities and groups, and then effectively applying that awareness. So as a mentor and a supervisor, I'm very aware as I am starting to partner with someone for coaching or mentor coaching or coaching supervision, those differences in beliefs, values, and rank. And I think especially in forming the partnership, the rank issue. So, you know, if I am coaching, supervising, or mentoring someone who is younger than me and or from a culture where I might be seen as more of a wise guide rather than an equal partner. That's something to take into account and to address. And Catherine Holt is sharing an additional resource in the chat. And then why? Recognized, cultural mindsets recognized by leaders, 90% of leaders from 68 countries in one study, and coaches as reflected in the new ICF competencies as crucial for success. And so examples, the contracting, how you schedule meetings, how it impacts relationships. In Julie Hayes' book, Reflective Practice and Supervision for Coaches, there's a section in the back of that, cross-cultural considerations, just even how meetings are being arranged. As we were chatting about, those of you who got on early, you know, in some cultures, people don't normally show up until after the starting meeting time, and how will you handle that? So lots of differences. And I think especially about I's 3 through 7 on the Peter Hawkins model of the I's 7I model, about relationships and how it's showing up in the system, cultural mindset showing up in the system, how we might be picking up on each other's. So thank you. All right. And I say that the path to developing a cultural mindset includes pausing to center. So Damien, could you pull up the slide now? The poll, please. We're just gonna do a quick poll to see where you think you are right now. How developed is your cultural mindset? Not very, medium, or very. We're seeing the numbers coming in. So 31 of 34 of you have voted. And we've got 6% at not very, and 52% at medium, and 42% at very. Thank you for participating. We'll repeat this.
I'm sharing the results, Marilyn, because only you could see them before. So now we're
okay, done. Great, thank you. So we'll check in on that later and see if that's changed any during today's call. And just a clarification, we have an hour or an hour and 15 minutes?
We're going to 15 after the hour.
Okay. All right. Is that how long your programs usually are?
No, usually are 1 hour. So
okay.
Today we have 50 minutes, and Lily, next month we are going to have 90 minutes. Is that correct? So people know.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I'm going to pack in as much value as I can in the first hour, and those who can stay for the extra 15 minutes get extra time. We have something special planned. Thank you. All right, so let's close. Do I just click on closing the poll? Okay.
People are not seeing it anymore. Only you see it and stay there.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Great. All right. So the 4 keys to developing cultural mindset for success that I've developed, and this is based on a lot of the research that I've done, especially Janet Bennett's work. The first key, as you can see, is awareness. The second, curiosity. And some of you already mentioned this at the beginning of the program when we were looking at how and where is cultural mindset showing up in coaching supervision. Humility and empathy. And so I pronounce this Ache. A for awareness, C for curiosity, H for humility, E for empathy. They told me in India that's a good word there. Ache. I don't want to pronounce it ache. All right. Huh, that went backwards instead of forwards. Huh. Okay, here we are. No. I'm trying to get to the slide that had the awareness on it with the circle, but it looks like right now it's the 4 keys to developing a cultural mindset.
We saw it a minute ago, a few seconds ago.
Yeah, see if I can get it back. There we go.
Now we can see it.
All right, great. So cultural mindset key number 1, awareness. So this is an example of many of the different social, the cultural identities that we all have. And this is kind of just even a sample. Our religion, our race, ethnicity, our gender, our socioeconomic level, our age, our sexual orientation, what region of the world we're in, or what region of our country we're in, whether we live in an urban or rural area, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go into breakout on this and invite you to first write down the answer to the first question. How might others be viewing you based on your cultural identities and rank? So within each culture, these things will hold different rank. So in the US, we think about it as being a more youth-oriented culture, and there is some age discrimination for people who are, you know, hey boomer or older. In other cultures that may not be true. So that's the first part. And then, and I'll write this in the chat too. And then the second part is you'll be paired with one other person to write down and reflect on how you are viewing them, just visually. What are the assumptions or bias or stereotypes that might be at play? And then the third part, which is not on here, is to ask the other person, your partner in this exercise, tell me about your culture and how it might impact our work together if we're supervising. So I'll write these down and we'll go into breakout groups. And does anybody have any questions about this before we get started? You're going to have 15 or 12 minutes total. So the beginning, you can even be doing that now, is to reflect and write, how might others be viewing you based on your cultural identities and rank? And then number 2, how are you viewing them? And take a few deep breaths and do a check-in on and write and reflect on this. Check for biases, assumptions, judgments. And it sounds like I've just thrown in that take a few deep breaths. It's really important to pause and do that because it moves the blood in our brain from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, the neocortex, where we can think more clearly and move from our unconscious to our conscious. So this is the exchange. Ask. And as part of this exchange, you'll have an opportunity to check back on what you've written in your reflection and see how valid it was. And I will tell you just an example of, I can't even remember if it was in a coaching supervision group or what the setting was, but someone, I think it was a coaching supervision group, someone shared they were coaching. They were in Europe, they were coaching someone, and their client was talking about their faith in God. And they said, and I immediately recognized how I had been raised, and the judgment that came up for me is they're stupid. That they'd been raised to believe that people who had a faith in God were stupid. And then they had to like pause and kind of step away from that judgment in the session to be able to be fully present and see that client again as with unconditional positive regard. So we'll have 12 minutes in the breakout, and Damien you've got the 3 asks. The first is the reflection or writing. How might others be viewing you based on your cultural identities and rank? The second, to write and reflect how you are viewing them. And then to have an exchange for about 5 minutes each. Tell me about your culture and how it might impact our work together. And then the second person asks that question.
Didn't feel like enough time, but I felt that there was a lot of openness and humor about things. And in terms of, I was very interested in how might my culture impact the work I do. I mean, this is something I have been grappling with since I was 11 years old. So I think what I realized I do is that when I feel a judgment entering, and that happens to me as it happens to everyone.
Yes.
And I almost flick a switch in my mind and I say, get curious. And I ask a question. And that seems to deflect the judgment and, or diffuse it, I should say. And then I ask later, where did that come from? Why did you have that? But in the moment, you want to be there and you have to find a way to really move it away. And getting curious is the best way that I have found.
Yes, and that's the next one, which we already started into, right? It was awareness, curiosity, humility, empathy. And by asking that question, we were getting curious. Thank you. So Lillian.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Was the first person who spoke the other Willa?
Yes.
Okay. I was just looking to see. I just wanted to comment in response to that. She met somebody that she hadn't met before, and I was working with somebody that I had met before. And even so, as Willa said, you can still get deeper. And we had I thought, very interesting and deeper level conversation because we'd already known each other about an area that we hadn't touched on before. And I felt like we could have gone on much longer.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to comment is that it just can keep going. Even one other thing that might be interesting for everybody is the first thing we started off talking about was our backgrounds. physical, like the Zoom background.
Oh,
And
okay.
what it says about you, Marilyn, I've always seen you have your book poster. I think, I can't remember how long I've seen it. It's been up for a while.
Mhm.
And your map on the other side.
Yep.
And we talked about philosophically what our backgrounds say about us. And it was our first conversation, Catherine Holt and I, was from looking at us, either she or I think you can see some markers and not others. And our global and cultural depth, multicultural depth, I think doesn't necessarily show from looking at us or our background. So we talked about, do we want to show that in our backgrounds like you have? And I purposefully chose a blank wall because of how I see myself as a supervisor and a coach, which is being of service. It's not about me. There's sort of a blank wall. I want to be of service to the other person. But so that was a initial discussion.
Oh, that's fascinating. And mine actually came about having the banner in the background from one of someone I was like mentoring, who said, you should have your name, something in the background, like the sportscasters do. It was a man, like they have the logo and everything to identify themselves. And
just one last point about that. And I'm not saying this about yours at all, but we did get into ethics around something else about when we bring in, the more we bring in our background, tell people who we are, what we are, whatever, then it becomes about us. And where does that ethically show up as a coach or a coach supervisor? How much of it is about us, or do we want to bring ourselves in the room? Yes, you should be conscious of who you are and how it's affecting it, but how do you want to manage that?
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. Thank you. And did we have other hands raised?
Yes, Ines, you had your hand raised. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you. In our session, I was with David. He got disconnected, although we had something in common. We both come from immigrant parents. So we discovered that this had an influence on our openness to try to fit in, or, for example, learning the other language. In my case, it was Italian, and we decided that our first language is Spanish, but then we studied English, and the Italian got aside because we're trying to connect with our community, and for example with all you guys, and in his case as well. And this is interesting because there is like a balance of openness, and how do you leave aside some other things? And maybe people who never had this experience don't feel the same.
Lovely, thank you. And I will share a little bit about what came up, because I was paired with someone also, and several things came up. One was this person had kind of an impatience and about slowness, that they would feel kind of anxious and impatient if things were going too slow, just based on their background. And so then I said, well, I tend to be a slower speaker. So how would we manage that in our work together? If that was bothering you, how would you let me know? And that is something, this is what I do. I ask this question, tell me about your culture, and how will that impact our working together in my profile that I ask people to complete, whether they're a supervisee or a mentee or a coachee. And we have a discussion about that. And then I want to ask, if I were ever to do something that would bother you or offend you, how would you let me know? Not will you let me know? Because in some cultures they would say, oh yes, but then not do it because it would be rude. So how would you let me know? Yeah, and then also the idea of some people might be reluctant to share in a group setting. How this has shown up in one of my groups was someone talking with me privately and saying, I'm not going to share my cultural introduction with the group because in my family history, we survived by hiding our cultural identity. So that they weren't comfortable sharing on that level, sharing it. So that's an interesting thing too. And anyone else want to share in our debrief time here? Okay, well, thank you. And this idea of going deep fast, I've used this in trainings too. And it really is a different way to get to know people. And even in the scheduling, we talked about how we both like to start and end things on time. So I am watching the time. I know we have 15 minutes left. And that we're kind of irritated when that doesn't happen. So that would have been an important thing for us to know in terms of scheduling, especially if it were different. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing. It's not showing up again, so I have to go back out and touch on it and then come back. Are you seeing slides now?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. There we go. So it went back to the beginning. So hang on for a minute.
Now we can see.
It's at the same place. Great.
Yes, yeah, well,
It went the wrong way. No, curiosity. So where could developing an intercultural mindset take you? Curiosity, key two, asking open questions, the how or what, like how might this impact you? Tell me more. Nancy Klein, what are you experiencing? So just to consider, how are you demonstrating curiosity about cultures? And a sense of spaciousness about that. And the next one is humility. So I have had this come up in coaching, and not as much in coaching supervision, more in coaching. This lack of pride or arrogance, moving from believing our culture is right and the only way, and therefore others are wrong, or we are all alike, to accepting other cultures, having their own wisdom and being able to adapt to them with that, again, that without fear of losing our own. And then finally choosing, integrating, and leveraging other cultural perspectives without losing their own. And this is based on William J. Bennett's work on ethnocentrism. And you see I have the arrows moving from right to left, which is the way some things are written in some cultures. So any questions, comments on humility? I actually had, and I see people are writing different resources, and I will be sharing references too. I did actually have a client start out by saying their goal was to improve external relationships and their negotiation skills. And I said, can you give me an example of that? And they said, yes, I want to prove to them they are wrong.
Can I say something about humility?
Yeah.
This may sound like I am hanging on to the negatives, but I have made, I guess the more involved you are with this, the less arrogant you can be, because you make mistakes, and you always will. And I have a little book with my mistakes, just little words that remind me of these embarrassing mistakes that I've made. And hopefully I don't make the same ones a second time. the other thing is I lived among the Kuna Indians in the San Blas Islands in Panama. And I'm an anthropologist, so I should preface it. When you walk into a culture like that, you have absolutely no idea what's going on. I mean, it's just amazing. And I don't know, you just shut up and watch, basically. And you go, oh my God, how the hell did I ever get here in the first place? But it does teach you humor and humility. And humor does translate across cultures.
Humor.
I've discovered.
Yeah, that's
Or having a sense of humor does.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. And when humor is introduced and how it's introduced can be a cultural thing. So in working in Ethiopia, we were told not to lead with humor. They want to have you lead with idea exchanges first, and the humor comes later. Otherwise, you're not taken seriously.
Right.
Yeah. Thank
Marilyn?
you. Yes.
Since you're bringing up William Bennett's work, are you going to be talking at all about minimization?
No, I think I'm going to share the resources because this is a time limited and it's kind of a taste. And then people can explore that more on their own. I see we have 8 minutes left.
Okay.
But thank you for bringing it up. Okay, empathy. The ability to sense other people's emotions and imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling, and listening to understand rather than to judge, paying attention to faces and nonverbal when we can do that, and along with integrating and leveraging differences, keeping in mind what we have in common. And this is drawn from the greatergood.berkeley.edu's research. And there's a quiz there on, you can take an empathy quiz and see how empathetic you are, or invite other people to do that. And then there's some suggestions after you take the quiz. So this is the approach, right, that we have towards clients, that you are creative, resourceful, and whole. And now you've learned to be more aware, curious, humble, and empathetic. You have the keys in your hand. And Damien, I'm going to ask you to do the poll again and see where we are now. And then I'll share the resources. So the question is the same. How developed is your cultural mindset? And we're seeing the scores come in. Ooh, they're changed. Okay, we have more people in the very. It's 68% now. It was 42% earlier. And so less in the middle, medium.
Do you want to wait to see anybody else want to participate before we close the poll, and I can share the results with everyone? Okay, I'm going to end the poll now so people can see the results.
I just want to say that very, which I answered both times, comes from a whole life of working on these things and working. But I am keenly aware of what I don't know. I mean, I know there's a huge, I have no idea about.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Me too. Continual learning. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. I'm going to close that. And I'm trying to move to the next one. So I want to thank you for your participation and ask you to write in the chat or to share what you discovered about developing your cultural mindset, what steps you're ready to take to achieve that. The freebie from this is a complimentary resource on 2 culturally intelligent tools to greater impact and income when you sign up for my newsletter. And that's the bias pause exercise, similar to what we did on our first breakout, plus a challenging communication model. And then I have my culturally confident credentialing mentor coaching program for people going for their MCCs or who have never been credentialed and are ready to be, but they're advanced coaches. And then my coaching supervision groups. And I look forward to our continuing connection. And finally, it's the references. So we had just published this book on the successful mind, and my chapter is Developing a Cultural Mindset, my book, Breaking Free from Bias. Coach's Guide to Becoming Culturally Confident is available only through my mentor coaching group right now. Milton Bennett, this is a great PDF of his, The Greater Good Berkeley for the empathy research and quiz, and then Hofstede, who did the initial research on some of the cultural variances on time and individualism, collectivism, etc. So you can take a screenshot of that if you'd like. This is also going to be back in the recording.
So Marilyn, somebody asked you, you're going to be sharing your slides. Are you or not?
Well, they're in the recording, right? I hadn't thought about that.
Okay, so let us know, and if you want to share, we can share that later. Somebody said that.
Okay, thank you. And what else has come up in the chat? Because now, for some reason, I can't see it.
Well, there are a lot of resources. People are sharing a lot of resources. So maybe by the end of the call, you can save the chat room by pressing the 3 dots. And the first option is save the chat room. So in that way, you can say there are a lot of different people who are sharing different resources. I shared a 21-day diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice bootcamp that I started yesterday. We invited also people to participate in our LinkedIn group. And it's really, I started doing it yesterday, and it's really amazing. So I highly recommend it. It's free, and it's at your own time, at your own pace.
Great, great. So anyone else on what they're taking away or steps that you're going to implement as a result of our discussion today?
Do you want people to write down in the chat room?
Yes.
And maybe a couple of people can share that with everyone. You can volunteer to open the microphone, and meanwhile, everybody can share in the chat room.
Yes. Thank you. Oh. Is that me writing on my slide? Oh, reflecting on the evidence, effect, impact of CQ on the 3 to 7 eyes. Following up on resources, so lots of homework. Greater awareness of cultural mindset, including my barriers. And several cultures are mixed. Country culture, corporate culture, professional culture, yes. Great comments. So we've got 1 minute left. Anyone else? I invite you to reflect on how you will do this, or how you're already doing it, or how you might want to amplify your discussion of culture in your coaching supervision. I see somebody shaking their head. Okay, great to see you all again, and it's time. So thank you for hosting, Damien and Lily, and great to be with you all.
Thank you, Marilyn. We really appreciate your participation. Would you mind stopping sharing the screen so we can say goodbye and give